Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. DC just dropped its brand new series, Lanterns, and I thought let's talk about the first 2 episodes of the series. We open with a young John Stewart. A respectful John. And we see that he experiences pretty extreme discipline, or just the act of trying to make him fearless. Our intro to John is his father taking him out in the back, putting an apple on his head and shooting the apple off of his head against, I believe, like the shed or the garage. And in this shot, we see John doesn't even flinch. He just, it gets shot off his head. He doesn't even care. But we see bullet holes. We see so many bullet holes. So this means John's been doing this since he was a little boy. And what we opened up on John doing was actually watching an interview with Hal Jordan. If you guys don't know, Hal Jordan is like the original Green Lantern, the pilot. And we see him in his costume on the news, and he seems very happy. Something I want to point out is John in particular is very respectful of authority and the chain of command. If there is someone that is higher than him or teaching him or coaching him, he will respect them even if it's not in his interest. He always gives respect to the person that's higher than him, the one that's giving the orders or has a higher ground than you. So that's something to note, because I think it will be important. From what I can conclude between episodes 1 and episodes 2, I think that John was chosen to be a Green Lantern when he was younger, way younger, and maybe told that he would get this role one day instead of, the original is the ring would usually choose you, and in this case it sounds like the Manhunters, not to be confused with Martian Manhunters, the Manhunters that created the Lanterns. It looks like they chose John from a young age. So it seems like he's being raised without fear. So that's why they're doing those bullet exercises of shooting the apple off his head. He's just being raised to be fearless, basically. To more of an example of John and the way he works with the chain of command is Hal just keeps pushing him as a trainer. He's consecutively putting Hal is consecutively putting John in positions as a trainer that make him uncomfortable and make him question the chain of command, which, John is uncomfortable with, because he always follows pretty much the rules. He always follows the rules and the chains of leadership that come before him, or that are higher than him. Now, Hal could just be doing this to be a dick, but I think that he's actually doing this, actually doing this so that he's teaching John not to always trust someone just because they're in charge or have jurisdiction over you. So I think he's trying to kind of settle that in John's mind, because this Hal seems really disconnected from the Green Lantern brand. Hal Jordan is a Green Lantern in these episodes, yes, but he seems like he's taken the suit off. He's not really in it often. He's not really in a rush to say the vows, and I'll get more deep into this, but these are things that I realized. Earlier we saw Hal as a brand new Green Lantern, younger, maybe a couple years on the job, in a news clip when John was younger. And then we see Hal again about 10 years previous to in a hologram, or like Jon Stewart likes to call it, a halogram, which is basically Hal leaving himself a hologram of himself. It gets confusing, but it's basically Hal left himself a message for him 10 years in the future, or some odd years in the future. And this hologram is able to talk to Jon, and even that Hal seems more genuine and kind-hearted and less grumpy than our current Hal Jordan. So we see that Hal Jordan has slowly over time got more of a distaste to him, a more grump, a more something going on, and we're following him through that. So still in this first episode, we get an intro into this small town in Nebraska that Hal and Jon are kind of wrapped into because there might be aliens that just got murdered. It's crazy. It's crazy. Something that I can really respect about this iteration is, I know budgetarily they might be wanting to save on all the alien adventures, but I always get the idea that this is still a very Green Lantern Galactic story with a grounded Earth-based plot, like a detective plot, but I still get so much Green Lanternisms out of this show and what they're doing that I'm not complaining. I like the little small town feel and the fact that there's aliens involved with it and the who's this and who's that. I've been loving so far. We also see Hal is kind of refusing to put on the suit, the Green Lantern suit. He kind of shies away from it. You know, he gives people excuses as to why he's not wearing it. Early in this episode, I would also like to say that Hal and Jon, and when they bicker, they both think each other is right, but ultimately sometimes they're both wrong, or someone's wrong, or the other's right, and ultimately it comes down to Jon thinking that he knows better, Hal thinking that he knows better, and it shows that Hal's experience ends up being right most of that time. So I like these little things that DC and Lanterns is doing to build up the Hal character. Although he's not an ideal role model, he's doing this with purpose. Even down to Hal knowing that he has to use this ring for good, and when necessary even, because he needs to recharge it and he needs to have enough energy in it at all times that if an emergency happens, he will be able to stop it. So I like that in the bar scene of Lanterns, he chose to take the ring off and fight with his hands, and that actually comes back to us at the end of the episode where he really needs to use it, and it may have been dead if he ended up using it in that bar scene. And doing this also really, really helps the budget, which I enjoy creative ways to slim your budget down so that you can use these VFX on great. You know, whenever they conjure something with the ring, it looks beautiful. It doesn't look funky. I like it. Even when it comes down to him making that $20 bill or whatever it was, it looks tangible. It looks good. It's good CG, and it's because they're saving, you know, the money on these little cheat sheets that I think are working for them. To end off episode 1, my absolute favorite part was the interrogation scene. I mean, come on, guys. It shows Hal's maturity when he needs it, and how wise Hal is to point out at someone and question them and know that they're an alien. From the beginning, Hal knew this was an alien, but then he had to prove it to the sheriff and to Jon that think they know better. And what is Hal doing? He's quizzing him. He's kind of learning his routes. He really knows a lot of stats about football. This alien knows a lot of stats about football. And then he starts asking him about Harry Potter or more pop cultural things like Obama. And guess what? The alien has no idea, which doesn't check out because a regular, everyday person would know what is the school of Harry Potter. Hogwarts. Most people would know that, but he, the alien, only studied the statistics of the small town to try and camouflage in. I loved this from Hal. It even comes full circle at the end because we know he saved the charge in the ring. He was waiting to use it if he needed to use it, and something happens where he has to mask an explosion from the city, And guess what? Because he didn't use his ring for silly things, and he knew what he was maybe getting himself into, he was able to use the ring. It didn't die before he was able to use it. He saved probably hundreds of lives doing that. Guys, sorry, my apologies if you can hear a lawnmower. I am so sorry. I'll try to turn the gain down. Welcome back to Lawnmower ASMR. But to close out on Lantern's first episode, we're hit with a little bit of a jaw dropper. It comes to the end and we find out 10 years have gone past. The sheriff and Jon Stewart rocking his goatee like he does in the comics. They find Hal 10 years in the future on those bleachers in Nebraska, and he has a bullet wound in his head, and he doesn't have his Green Lantern ring. So they really went for it with letting you know Hal Jordan will die. If it is Hal Jordan, we have no idea. Which leads us into episode 2 of Lanterns. We open up with Hal teaching Jon how to fly, and again, really pushing his buttons because he just throws water on him to wake him up. He's really pushing his buttons. He's showing up late. He's throwing water on him, and still Jon respects it. So they're trying to learn how to fly. And the cool thing about this is Hal and the will that a Green Lantern has. You know, Hal was a pilot, so he said flying was like second nature to him. Whereas Jon Stewart conjures up a bird, and this bird becomes important as this episode goes on. And I really liked that. I loved the dynamic, and I also love that that bird stayed with Jon even after the ring, because we learn more about that at the end of the episode. At first you're like, I wonder, because Green Lanterns usually have to have the ring to have the conjurement or whatever they conjure, and Jon still had the bird the whole episode. So that begs the question, can Jon use his powers without having the Green Lantern ring? I guess we'll find out. I don't know how I would like it, as I do love the idea of a Green Lantern using the ring and having the will to keep it on, and the idea of if their will gets lost, the Green Lantern ring, it's off. So I like the ring. I'm curious to see the Jon angle that they take with this. And for almost the rest of this episode, Jon and Hal will go their separate ways. Jon is going to go find the lantern that Hal needs to charge the ring, and Hal is going to go his own way and try to investigate a little more in this small town of Nebraska. And I thought this was some of the best stuff of Hal that we got. Him and his detectivisms I thought were brilliant. He goes and visits William, which is like a someone that really helps the town financially and has all this money and has backers or supporters that give him this land, and he's very anti-alien. I don't want them to colonize. I have to be prepared. And that guy actually ends up shooting Hal. Not lethal, just in the shoulder, more like a warning, because Hal was pushing his buttons on his property. And we see on the other side of things, we see Jon going to the Green Lantern house of Hal, where there is only a mattress and like a TV. Hal has this mansion that was gifted to him because he saved a rich person, and yet he only has a mattress in this whole big house. Jon ends up finding the lantern, and he holds the Green Lantern suit up to him in a mirror, and you kind of get that, Jon really respects the lantern name, whereas Hal kind of doesn't. Or not how he used to, at least. So, Hal has to go to the hospital because he got shot. And Jon ends up getting kidnapped by a group of people. On Hal's side of things, he's in a hospital that doesn't have any patients or doctors. There's nobody in it, and the equipment in this small town of Nebraska is all brand new, like straight out of the crate in the plastic. Interesting. What's going on in this town? What's going on in this town? I'm excited. I really like the way that they're showing and not telling. We as viewers are not dumb, and we can interpret that from what they're showing us, and I think that's going to help them overall. And before all this, Hal also finds out that the metal detectors at the football stadium where the alien was shot weren't metal detectors. aliens in this small town in Nebraska. And that's what leads him to go talk to William. That's an odd thing to do, but the humor of Hal with these dead bodies in his car, and he's just driving around and he's just pulling them through these machines. It's hilarious, and I love it. So A+. We get some good action sequences in this car with John and the gang of people that kidnapped him, and they have a message for him. They're not necessarily there to kill him. They hurt him a little bit, but they give him a message, something that they don't trust Hal with, and we get to see that he just gets let free. He gets let go after that because they just needed to give him this message. We also find out that the sheriff just transferred from Gotham, and with all things in Gotham, I don't know if I can trust that or not trust that. Like, there are some pretty corrupt people in Gotham. I hope she's not corrupt. But something uneasy about this sheriff, and that she really keeps walls up and isn't being transparent. I don't know if I trust her yet. We also find out that John now realizes that it's almost near impossible for a lantern to have their conjunction, or whatever they manifested, stay with them without the ring, let alone as long as it did. So John turns to Hal and tells him that. He also tells him the information that he's learned from those guys, because even though those guys didn't trust Hal, John trusts Hal, and Hal trusts John. And I think that's something that's going to keep coming up, is their trust. No matter what they told him, John still told Hal what was going on. Hal goes and he finds Sinestro, and I think Sinestro looks great. I think he looks awesome. When I played the Injustice games, I always liked playing as Sinestro for some reason. I think this Sinestro looks really good, and I just love the way that he's designed personally, my personal opinions. And we find out that Sinestro was actually put in jail by Hal, and it's also noted that Sinestro trained Hal. So he put his trainer in jail. So Hal put Sinestro here because he made attacks on the Manhunters, which is the creators of the Green Lantern Corps. And I think Hal is slowly trying to not trust the Green Lantern Corps that much. And I think that's why he's not really liking to recite the Green Lantern Oath and things like that. I think he's really turning his back on it because maybe they're doing something sketchy, and maybe that's why he's teaching John to not trust authority in that same way. We also end this episode with Sinestro telling Hal, John is the biggest threat. He said Manhunters would be your second threat. Your biggest threat is John Stewart. Oh, what's gonna happen? What is gonna happen? Regardless of what goes down, I am so excited to see where Lanterns keeps going. I love what we're building to. I just love how they're cutting the budget, but in a smart way, how they're not telling us things and pushing stuff down our throat, but letting us experience it. The dynamic with Hal and John, they're both likable, but in different ways, and does that morph? Things are building up. I'm starting to trust people less and trust certain people more. But you guys, if you've seen Lanterns, please let me know what you guys think so far. Episodes 1 and 2 have been great for me so far, and I'm hooked to see 3 and 4 and so on. And so on. So please let me know in the comments what your favorite part of Lanterns is, or if you're going to check it out, or if you haven't checked it out at all, or if you hate it. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, as always,